It's that time of the year again where I need to service my 2013 Audi S4, specifically replace the oil in the 3.0 TFSI Supercharged V6 up front. But I thought I would do something slightly different this time, which is make use of this Liqui Moly Pro Line engine flush. I picked it up on eBay for I think about £10. Side note, eBay is currently a great place to buy car parts and things like oil. You get it for way cheaper than literally anywhere else. Highly recommended. But I picked it up with the notion that it would be, you know, something to try out this time. I mean, the car's got about 68,000 miles on it, so I thought it'd make sense to try it out. I'm not specifically worried about my engine being, you know, nasty inside. It's had a very good service life and service intervals, but I thought it'd be a nice, well, thing to try out anyway. How to use it is really pretty simple. All you do is crack it open and dump it all into your oil or your oil fill port. Then you start your engine and let it idle for up to or at least 10 minutes. In theory, letting the engine get up to operating temperature can mean that it can help sort of break up any excessively stuck deposits, but in general the instructions recommend 10 minutes, and so give or take I think that's pretty much what we did. Then you just obviously shut off the engine and change your oil. Stick around to the end of the video to see how it actually turns out, but for now let's get to actually swapping out the oil. Doing that on this engine is actually remarkably easy, as I'll be honest, as most engines, but this one is pretty simple. You'll need a way to lift the vehicle up at least somewhat. In my case, I just used some relatively small DIY wooden ramps that I made to get the car just high enough that it's easy enough for me to both get under and to remove the belly pan, for which you'll need a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the quarter turn fasteners that hold the majority of the belly pan on. Although in my case I also needed a T30, a Torx bit and driver to be able to remove the two T30 sort of plastic screws that were towards the front, connecting it to the front bumper. And once those are out, the belly pan can be moved out of the way. You'll also need an oil drain pan. I would highly recommend this 12 litre one. It's a sort of jerry can style. It's nice and easy to obviously let the oil drain into, but also is nice and secure for the oil and keeps it obviously well contained and easy to then pour it all out into your, you know, receptacles and take it to the recycling centre. So highly recommend that one. I'll leave an Amazon affiliate link to it in the description down below, but you'll need that. You'll also need a 36mm socket to be able to loosen and remove the oil filter housing, or the cap on it, which also contains the filter, or sort of holds the filter. You'll also probably want some sort of shop rags or kitchen towels type thing to make sure that all of the old oil doesn't drip out both onto the floor and into your engine bay as you lift the oil filter and cap and filter out. Then once you've got it out, you can just literally pull carefully on the filter to disconnect it and slide it off of the filter housing cap. And then you'll want to use an angled pick to carefully again dig at the O-ring that is still inside the cap, remove that. Your new filter, which I'm using a Bosch one with this part number, although the original equipment I believe it is a MANN, an M-A-N-N filter with this slightly different part number, but they're the same thing, and both of them should come with replacement O-rings, specifically two. One, the thicker and generally larger one, is the one that goes in the cap itself. Make sure to apply some of either the old or new oil to the O-ring before seating it in place. Then you can slide the new filter on and it sort of clicks into place. Once that's in, you can then replace the O-ring that's on the actual oil filter housing itself. I just use my fingers to sort of squeeze it and slide it up enough that I can just pull it off. And then again, when you replace that O-ring with the new one, make sure to coat it in a thin film of oil before sort of rolling it into place and making sure it's fully seated. and then I would generally only just place the new filter in because we actually need to still drain the oil, and that gives a path for air to come through and to help all of the oil that's in the engine come out nice and easily. You'll also need a 6mm Allen key or sort of ratchet, whatever, to be able to remove the sump plug. And when you do that, obviously as you get it out, it's going to disperse all of the oil, hopefully into your drain pan. As it drips out, you can use your kitchen towels, whatever, to clean up the sump plug, especially if you're reusing it. Although you will not want to reuse the 14mm and 1.5mm thick crush washer. And this is why. I've never actually seen this happen, but the crush washer did its job and crushed down to size properly. And you can see how it's deformed well to obviously seal that joint, but is not in a reusable state. Once all of the old oil has drained out, you can use your shop towels or kitchen towels, whatever, to clean up the area and then reinstall, ideally by hand, the sump plug so you don't accidentally cross-thread it. I found it could be pretty easy to do if you aren't careful, so well, do be careful. And then you can use your 6mm Allen bit with a torque wrench to tighten it down to 30 Newton meters. Once that is tight, you can then tighten the oil filter housing down to 25 Newton meters plus 5 Newton meters separately. It's actually printed on the cap, which is always nice. It's very handy when those, specs are listed right there. But basically you just tighten it down to 25 and then set your torque wrench to 30 and tighten it that extra 5. And once that's done, you can start filling it with your new oil. Your oil should be actually quite a wide range of different options. Specifically, it needs to meet either the VW 502 and 505 or 504 and 507 specifications. I went with this Liqui Moly 5W40, which meets the 502, 505 spec, and should work pretty well in my use cases. But you can actually use anything from 0W40 to 5W30, 5W40, really anything that meets those VW specs should be fine. Although the Liqui Moly High Tech is what I've been using, and it's treated me rather well. I've had next to no oil burn over the period of the pretty much year since I've replaced it, so that's a good option. In terms of capacity or volume, in theory the engine should take 6.8 litres for a complete change, although I normally get more like 6.2 litres out of it. And so that's generally what I'm sort of putting back in. But in my case, I pick up 7 litres as a kit, again, on eBay, and it generally works out fine. Also means that I generally have some spare that I can keep in the boot, so that if I do happen to have a leak or any oil consumption, I can top it up as I go without having to be at home for, my extra supplies. Of course, when you top up the oil, I would highly recommend, if you haven't already, purchasing the dealership-specific tool, aka the dipstick. I'll leave the part number for that on screen if you want to pick that up. Again, I picked it up on eBay. I really do recommend it. And then use that to find the level for the oil, and obviously it's fine to top it up to max or even slightly above max for your first fill, because when you then go and start the car and let the oil pressure build and then turn it off again, your oil filter will be filled with oil, and all the sort of passageways will fill up as well, and so you're likely going to be down to below max, below minimum, depending. So you then want to top up until you get it to a consistent, ideally somewhere between min and max level, striving towards perhaps slightly towards max for a bit of extra peace of mind. Of course, don't forget to stick the under tray back on with all of those quarter turn fasteners and the 2 T30s up at the front, and then bring your car back down to the ground, however you lifted it. And of course, it's a good idea to pour all of your old oil into the cans or the bottles that you just emptied, filling with filling your engine with new oil, which means it's easy for you to then take those to your local recycling centre to dispose of them properly. But it's also a good idea to take a look at the oil as you're pouring it in, which means we can take a look at the sort of the effects of that engine flush. So Did it do anything? Well, first of all, I should make it clear that everything you're about to hear is my anecdotal evidence and, you know, my opinion rather than any measured objective results or tests. So do take everything I'm saying with a massive pinch of salt. Your mileage can and probably will vary, so keep that in mind. With that said, I've generally been keeping an eye on, at very least, the colour and sort of consistency of the oil from the dipstick tube over the last couple months prior to the change, and even checking it before actually doing putting the engine flush in. And I would say that the oil that came out of the engine was markedly darker and sort of, you might say, nastier than the oil that you know, I've been checking and the colours and consistency I've been seeing. I would also mention that, like I said, my car has had a relatively good service history and service intervals, and so I'm unlikely to believe that, you know, the insides of my engine is completely black and nasty, but it does seem like, especially from a, you know, colour and consistency perspective, comparing to my last oil change, the things like the filter and the oil itself were significantly, at very least, darker and clearly more sort of carbon deposited than honestly I would expect, because I've driven the car a fair bit less this year than I had the year before, and the oil looks sort of, you know, nastier this time than it did the previous time when I'd driven more. I would expect it to be cleaner now, you know, without the engine flush being included, and that is what I've been generally seeing with the dipstick sort of checks. So in general, I would say that it could be a good option. Of course, like I said, this is not an objective measurement or anything like that, but I think that for a tenner, and for maybe even just a touch of peace of mind, and also if you're only going to do it once every, you know, 10, 20, 30,000 miles, whatever, I don't think that's too bad of a deal. I think that's probably a tenner and 10 minutes well spent. And I thought I would mention the reset of the service indicator sort of notification. If you have VCDS, a tool I highly recommend and one I've done a video about already, then you can use the SRI reset function to, in my case, just reset the fixed schedule service, and it will reset all of the values automatically. It's literally one click to do it. It's fantastic, and it resets everything ready to go. No more reminders. All of the, you know, distance and time are all reset, so all good. So that's how to replace the oil on a 3.0 TFSI, and a bit about the engine flush. If you have any questions, suggestions, things that I should have done better, then feel free to leave those in the comments down below. If you want to see more videos like this one, then do hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell notification icon. And if you want to check out more videos, including more on my S4 and the things that I've done, including the DSG service, as well as the 034 Motorsports mounts, or even just some general other guides and things, car reviews as well, check those out on the end cards. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll leave some links to some of the parts and stuff in the description. Yeah, we'll see you all in the next video.